PvP has been dying for a long time in Old School Runescape, and there are countless videos from our top players about it, and this completely summed it up perfectly for me, as myself and 5 random strangers mined a shooting star together in the wilderness, in the exact same place hundreds of players used to PK when the wilderness was absolutely booming. And who could forget the events surrounding the Dead Man Mode final?
Change up their strategies of what they expect to see from each other is really important.
Staff bash come in though from 10-13. I'm not sure how I feel about that one.
Yeah, potentially a misclick.
Okay, this may be why it seems like we are.
Unsurprisingly, people are furious about the state of PvP, but there are very few who are actually trying to do anything to fix it. So I decided to put my head above the parapet and show a way to save PvP. Some people will love the suggestions I make and others will absolutely hate them, but that's fine because I'm going to address every single issue, including bringing new players into PvP, the problem with the recent PvP update, and making PvP feel new and exciting again. But first, we need to get real. Old School Runescape has practically one income, which is membership either paying monthly or through bonds. Like you, I wouldn't want to change that at all, but at the same time RS3 also makes money through Solomon's store, selling clothes, pets, perks and much more. Treasure Hunter lets you buy keys for possible rewards, including bonus XP and GP, and Rune Metrics gives you access to a load of information for a monthly fee. They also have tons of merchandise that you can buy in a store, and all of these have regular promotions at least once a week that constantly bombard players in the game in order to increase revenue. These things are what most of us absolutely hate about the way RuneScape went and why a lot of us play Old School, but the money Jagex makes from them allows them to have a much larger team, work on RS3, meaning more updates and more content. To add to this, whilst the polls have been amazing for what we want, it means a lot of players don't want certain content, big changes and a lot of new things. The mods literally have a fraction of the staff they need for the content we want, and they practically have one arm tied behind their backs because of the restrictions we implement on our own game. I say this purely for some realism on what is and what isn't possible. It is still possible to fix PvP, but we have to be real and clever with the updates we do. In PVM, the mods have been very clever, making very similar items that have a different purpose, by making bosses weak to certain styles, weapons and special attacks. This now means that we need to have many different weapons and armor for different bosses, introducing a ton of new items into the game without having to introduce new bosses at the same time. This keeps the game feeling fresh without the need for massive updates, which aren't always possible with the size of the Old School team. So the first thing I suggest is PvP specific armor and weapons, a concept proven to work in many games. This works by the armor having a 20% damage reduction when fighting other players and the weapons having a 20% damage increase when fighting other players. That means PvP weapons and armor can have slightly lower stats than PVM gear and still be better for PKing, but not that great for PVM. This would introduce a ton of new items into the game, new special attacks and new combinations. To add to this, every season or year, slightly better gear can be released by simply adding an extra couple of % damage on weapons and an extra couple of % damage reduction on gear as well. And this keeps PvP always feeling fresh and new. Every season there will be a ton of brand new gear with completely different KO combinations released. Tell me that alone doesn't sound exciting, fun and something you would look forward to. Now I know some polls failed in 2019 on new weapons, but they were OP ones that most people couldn't afford and would wreck PVMers going into the wilderness who are also voting on the updates. But hopefully a balanced update like this will not be seen just as an OP update for a few PKers. The next part I would love to see added into PvP is something that I feel is really lacking in Old School Runescape, and that is variety or the ability to tweak builds and make them unique, and we end up instead doing it through our stats. But by adding an item into the game, whether that be some sort of enchant or imbue, or an item that you can add to certain armor which gives a small +2 strength, +2 mage, +2 range strength, +5 accuracy, or +10 defense for example, it would make our builds more unique and add a bit more strategy into the game. Or even better would be one of the perks from leagues that you could add to a weapon. These are quite OP, so may have to be toned down slightly or used as a special attack that lasts for just a small amount of time. Next up, I wanted to address the issue that the way to fix PvP is by enticing some PVMers by offering them a good money makers just so PvPers have some free meals. This is absolutely not the way to fix PvP, and it's actually harmful to it. Most PVMers aren't stupid, so they go almost risking nothing, meaning after running around and hopping worlds a bunch of times, PKers eventually get to kill someone for 50k who doesn't even put up a fight. For the PKer, that's no fun whatsoever, and for the PVMer, they always associate the wilderness as the place they die constantly. This game has survived because updates like Deadman, Leagues, and loads of new gear to use are a ton of fun. But updates just to try to get people into the wilderness is a way that isn't fun for anyone and will only ever harm the game in the long run, and that backwards thinking is partly the reason why it's empty in the first place. The next issue will be where you get this new gear, and if you want more people in the wilderness, that is the best place to start. If like me you remember the good old bounty hunter days when these worlds were packed, and I would love to see days like that return, and I think this will be the perfect opportunity. If we allowed these items to be tradable and from any PK in the wilderness, we all know what would happen. Real world traders would simply make bots, kill each other and farm the hell out of them, so that isn't a possibility. I will personally make them non-tradable as a rare drop in PvP, about a 1 in 512 for a chance to get an item as long as you are both risking over 100k, but a 1 in 32 if it is your bounty hunter target. The season will probably be a year long, which makes the drop rates rare enough that it's going to be a long time to obtain them all. The increase in bounty hunter rates counter the fact that some players in clans may try and just barrage each other in multi for the drops. So the regular player can compete with that by getting the gear just as fast in bounty hunter worlds. This will also mean PKers fighting PKers again in mass and fixes the biggest problem of all, getting new PKers, because this would also give regular players a reason to try PvP, to try out new gear and new content. Whilst most of the gear should come straight from PKing, I can't help but feel this would be an excellent opportunity to revive some of the PvP minigames and to obtain some of the rewards from them. And you may think, what's the point? Well, PvP minigames give people the opportunity to get into PvP in a safe environment where they're not risking a lot of money. This is crucial to PvP in the long term, and whilst we have Last Man Standing, which is a great minigame, unfortunately someone new to PK would have to do probably over 100 different attempts before they may have a chance of winning just once. Think about that for a minute, dying 100 times before you have any chance of winning. How many people are really going to stick to that? But to use the minigames, we still need to make them fun, otherwise players are just going to do it for the gear and the content will be dead again before long. The problem with Castle Wars is whilst there are different ways to cross the map, there is a bottleneck on either side. That means the tactics are simply to camp and barricade the hell out of the area just before the flag, and the higher level or better geared team simply wins. It's the same every single game. It's tedious, repetitive, boring, and it's difficult for any single player to have that much of an impact on the game. Realistically, Jagex aren't going to revamp the whole minigame to make it fun, but a few simple tweaks will at least make it far more interesting tactically and mean players will need to try to work together. Firstly, by making this room the flag room and where you score the points instead of upstairs will make a massive difference. It will mean that the attacking team can go through the underground and come up by the ladder, through the north side or through the west side. I would also make this side always open as well, giving it extra attacking options and making it much harder to defend. That means to defend will now require a lot more teamwork, and a good player may be able to find a weakness and exploit it. The defense would then need to either defend from on top of the wall and the underground, from outside the room and the underground, or they can choose to defend the room but with less room to stop the flag bearer, or they can even go outside the castle walls in a much larger area as well as the underground, meaning you have more time to stop the flag bearer but your defense is spread much further apart. With extra tactics within the game, it would make it much more fun, both working together and as an individual trying to outsmart the opposition, but to do this we are going to need to communicate, so would require a tab or chat to be able to talk to each other in these games. Soul Wars suffers from exactly the same problem, and that is that there are so many bottlenecks in this game that there ends up being a big fight in one of the areas and a team with the highest levels or best gear simply wins. The losing team gets stuck at a bottleneck and constantly killed, making the game not much fun at all. Again, without changing the game completely, we can change a few things that stops this happening, meaning a player or small group can have a huge impact and turn a game around. Firstly, by making the map a little bit bigger, it gives players the option to get past defences and around bottlenecks unseen. That extra space will allow you to have 2 obelisks, and controlling these could be a very effective way of winning, but to do so is going to mean your team using up a lot of players to try to defend 2 at the same time, and makes it much easier for the opposition team to make a big push on one of them. Next will be to make 2 entrances to the avatars. That way you have to have players keep an eye out in case there is a push from the north or south, and organises your defence accordingly. Next, I would move the spawn area away from the avatar, so you're not forced into a potential battle and bottleneck straight from the spawn. From this area you would always have the option of going to defend the avatar, to either obelisk, to the graveyard, or even mount a sneak attack yourself. With these changes, once you add new gear as a reward, a lot of players will come here, and with the new tactics will hopefully have much more fun and keep coming back, especially if they add some other rewards here as well where you can make some decent money. Lastly is the one that probably needs the least work, and that is last man standing. I know this will divide opinion, but I would love to see the starter gear reduced to basic gear, and the loot crates have either the best gear in the game or even give you some OP rewards such as the ones I mentioned earlier from leagues, which will allow for a little bit more RNG in the game. To save PvP in the long term, you're going to need new PKs, and this game mode is the best way to learn. While some will say the best should win, and it's hard to disagree, expecting new PKs to lose time and time again without any chance of winning is unrealistic that they're going to keep on wanting to play. By starting with worse gear and adding a few OP items that a random person gets to gain a large advantage, it makes it more fun for most players, and the best players will still win most of the time. This will increase the amount of players who want to start a PK and can surely only be beneficial in the long run. I believe that what I've suggested is very achievable with the resources Jagex have for Old School Runescape, and whilst you may not agree with all of it, if nothing is done, the current path is simply to add new content for PVMers to try so PKs can have easy kills. If that repeated over and over again is the future you want for PvP, you won't hear this from anyone else, but feel free to hit that dislike button. However, if you believe the updates I've suggested will make PvP better, then please hit the like button. And I have added polls for every suggestion to see which ones you agree with and which ones you disagree with. But please also put your suggestions below and make sure to like your favourite suggestions too. Lastly, this next thing is highly controversial, but I would personally like to see brawler gloves back into the game, even if their effectiveness is reduced. These gloves, for those of you that don't know, gave you extra XP when skilling in the wilderness, between 50% at level 1 Wildy and up to 400% after level 47, and you got them as a rare drop from a player kill, and you could use them a few hundred times before they disintegrated. These were the main reasons I started to PK, and it brought a PVMer into the wilderness both to PK and to skill for years. Because let's be honest, we'd rather do anything than have to train agility. As you can probably tell, I care deeply about this, and it's not just about making a video. So therefore, this video alone, everyone is free to use, sample, analyse, or share this video in any way they want.